Hello, everybody. This is John Bell, and this is the Harbinger Report. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming back and tuning in. I've got a fantastic guest for you tonight, and I'm really excited about it, and I'll explain why a little bit more in a minute. But a few updates on events going on in the world. Right now, everybody's aware with what's going on in Texas with the border, Governor Abbott and Biden, okay? A lot of people contacted me and said, see, the Supreme Court ruled with Biden, so Abbott in Texas is breaking the Constitution. That's incorrect. If you read the Constitution, it's the Supreme Court that's in clear violation of the Constitution, not Abbott. The entire creation of our country was so that states had independent rights against the government and especially to defend themselves. And that's the point of what's going on. I listened to a former Green Beret, high-level Green Beret, that's working with Greg Abbott in his office about security problems they're facing that are threatening our entire country. So it's a major deal. Please keep that situation in your prayers and that it de-escalates and doesn't escalate into civil war. 19 states, including mine, have signed on to defend Texas. So that's fantastic, as it should be. That's how it's supposed to work. Anyway, besides, again, I will point out they're talking about all the military age men and people with that are coming across that have UN military soldier ID cards, not to mention IED explosives. Okay, so there's a lot of nefarious stuff that's going on here, and it needs to be dealt with, or our country is going to fall. All right. Ronald Reagan said, if you can't protect your borders, you don't have a country. You don't have a nation. So, and he's not wrong. And by the way, if you enter illegally into Mexico, do you know what happens? Doesn't matter what your little sad story is. You go to prison with hard labor for years. Period. End of story. Drop the mic. And that's how most countries are. Yeah. Especially like all these people coming from the Middle East. You try going to their country, see what happens to you. It isn't a pretty story, I promise you. Now, that said, before we get into the show, there's some things articles I wanted to bring up real quick. Since we were talking about the zombie fungal virus in the other videos, I just wanted to show there is a report in the news that's talking about a fungus that they are finding now is a contributor to what could be causing Alzheimer's disease. Okay. Take a close look at what this says, especially at the top. All right. I highly recommend what this says at the top. All right. So this is going on to explain that a little bit further. Then on another story, y'all heard about in New York when they found the underground tunnels in the Jewish synagogue that caused the big stir, and they found like dirty mattresses and kids' clothes down there, which is really terrifying. Well, this report was released today. Underground tunnels and hybrid breeding programs. Hybrid breeding programs. Okay. So you can pause on this, look up the story if you want. Here's another part of it. They're talking about these tunnels being buried under Brooklyn. but also they tied into Jeffrey Epstein Island, because one of the things they don't talk about in the Jeffrey Epstein Island is it wasn't just this big thing where they were abusing kids for elites and stars and everything else. And look up the list of people that attended those things, okay? Because that's important. But another thing they don't talk about it is Epstein had a genetic breeding program where he said he was trying to breed a future of people all with his DNA after a world collapse, economic collapse kind of thing. And that's what he was preparing for. And some reason that doesn't make the news very often, that he was doing weird genetic experiments. So, in fact, that article I just posted talks about a woman who was kidnapped and kept there as a prisoner and used sexually. But she talks about how she woke up in an underground lab there one night and saw just some crazy stuff. So there's a lot more going on that meets the eye. It also goes into in that story about Sean Snyder, who was murdered after 13 attempts against his life for coming out publicly talking about Dulce Underground Military Base, a dumb, deep underground military base. And he said that there were like over 140 of those underground military bases at that time. And that was so long ago. I mean, that number's probably 200 to 400 now at this point, at least well over 200. And they're doing genetic experiments. And if you listen to some of the whistleblowers from there, like Emmerich Smith, they mix all kinds of human, animal, and other DNA together to see what kind of nightmare things they can come up with. All right. So Emmerich Smith said that he did genetic testing on creatures that he couldn't tell if they were actual aliens, or if they were something that we just cooked up in a lab. Like, he had no way of knowing, but they were one or the other, and they were probably both. Anyway, that stuff aside, I just wanted to reiterate that stuff because it's in line with the last show, and then of course the potential Civil War situation. How funny is it that we have a movie coming out next month called Civil War, where it's Texas basically against the U.S. I mean, that's not a coincidence. I believe in conspiracy. I do not believe in coincidence. Okay. Now, to get on to our guest in the show tonight, I have a very special guest for you. And let me explain this a little bit. I heard this story because they've been making their way around on a lot of different channels, and I've heard it on at least 2 channels, at least, if not more, this story already. And when I heard this story, I loved it. I mean, I love this story. And when I heard it, 2 things. I was like, I like this story so much. I want to come on here and just do an episode just talking about this story. And I didn't have any hopes at the time of actually being able to get the person on the show that tells the story, that lived this story. So that's phenomenal. And I can only put that up to God's hands. Okay. That's how God's work, not mine. Second of all, there's a part in his story when I heard it just boiled my damn blood. All right. And we'll get into that later. But without further ado, let me introduce our fantastic and amazing guest tonight, Joe Barger. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, it's Barger. Yep.
Barger. Sorry.
Yeah.
Joe Barger, and his wife's also going to be coming on. She's tending their child right now, but she'll be coming on too, popping in and out. Jenny Barry, his wife. Okay. So Joe, why don't you give us a brief bio, and then we'll get into your story of what took place.
Okay. Well, my name is Joe Barger, and I'm 60 years old right now. Truck driver currently still, and been doing that for around 15 years now. I had a lot of other careers in my life over time, but this is the most recent. And but anyway, I did some military and when I was young, and quite a few things in between. Um, well, getting into what had occurred and with my encounter, I picked up a load in up near Traverse City, Michigan, and as I was bringing it back, and what it was paper rolls, just rolls of paper, but it was heavy, large, huge rolls, 7 or 8 just massive rolls, and 42, 3,000 pounds, something like that. And as I was coming back to bring it to the terminal in southern Michigan, this is up in the northwestern part where I was picking it up, I noticed an air leak. And as as I was looking at my gauge, I was noticing it was getting down towards the red on my air, and I'm like, the compressor wasn't really keeping up with it very well. So I stopped to see what I I could find out, and I'm in the Manistee National Forest. And I found, and I've done this route before. I've done this load in a few other times, and I knew there was a spot that I could uh, going through this forest area. There was a turnaround spot that I think snow plows use and things like that. Well, it was enough room for me to pull into. I jump out, looking around. I find the leak. There was a little cut that was in one of my lines on the trailer. I have things in the truck to repair stuff like that, that I can get back on the road temporarily to get back and not wait on a service call that might take who knows how long. So as I was doing that, things just started getting off and weird to me. The feeling, no, I was hearing things in the woods. This was in June of 2017, and it was about 7:30, so plenty of daylight. It's still a few hours of daylight at least. So I saw shadows, and I saw movement, and I heard some odd noises near me in the woods that I couldn't see very well, but I saw shadowing and movement as well, and it was black, very dark, and it looked kind of big. And where I'm at, there are black bears in that area. And I thought, well, that's probably what it is. It could have been even maybe a deer. I didn't know, but I was just getting such an odd, eerie feeling too. Um, like something wasn't right. Hair like standing on the back of my neck type of feeling. And the atmosphere started getting weird. Like I'm not in it's just off phase a bit or something. Something wasn't right. And there's nothing going on with me physiologically or psychologically. It's just something wasn't, I don't know. I was just really uneasy about the whole thing. And I just thought, well, I'm going to grab my stuff, get in the truck. Hopefully my air holds well, and I'm gone. So that's what I did. I as I was coming out, I was I had to make a U-turn to get in that area, and as I was coming back out, I had to do another U-turn. And I don't know if this is relevant later in the story, because it's just we'll get to that in a little bit, but I think it might have had something to do with what helped me in the whole situation. But anyway, as I was going, and I'm at the bottom of this hill, and where this is at, I'm starting at the bottom of a pretty long grade, which is probably a mile long, and it's pretty steep, and I'm heavy, so I can't really get any speed for quite a while till I get to the top. I'm maybe 30, 25 to 30 is what I'm getting going up this hill. And as I'm looking over in my driver's side, I I'm looking for traffic. I'm clear. There's not a lot of traffic here, anyways. Every you see cars, but not a lot. Anyway, I'm looking to my right side, and the biggest dog or wolf head you ever could imagine was looking down, like even stooping down to even look in at me with these golden yellow eyes. Just a massive thing with a mane. This, and he was jet black and just this mane like a lion almost, and a cape down to his shoulders, and it just blacked out my whole window area out right on the other side of my mirror, and I didn't know what. I'd never heard of a Dogman at this point. I didn't. I knew what Bigfoot were. As a matter of fact, I've had one of those encounters when I was real younger. So I knew about those, but I never heard. Even though this is a Michigan Dogman, is where its namesake comes from. And I'm from Michigan. I've never heard of it. So until this, anyway. Um, I was had a million things going through my mind, and as it was running alongside of me, and I'm probably going about 25 to 30, and it was fluid. Its motions were fluid. Its teeth were bright white. Its tongue was like the size of a cow's tongue. Its canine teeth were 3.5, 4 inches long, I would say, top and bottom. All the teeth are jagged. Mouth looks a little bigger than the average dog would be as far as the opening. Just looks more openness there. If that, you know, if that's a good explanation or not, it just seems like it's more mouth opening than a normal wolf or dog. Really wide and broad, and say that this head was probably, I would say, the size of a grizzly, all day long.
How wide would you say the head was if you had to guess?
Well, there
Real
was a
quick,
lot of
guys, can you
fur.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, I just went in the other room and I got an earbud in, so I'm here. I'm just listening. I'm sorry
Okay,
to
great.
interrupt you guys, but go ahead, Joe and John.
No, that's fine.
Well, anyway, I don't know if I could tell you the skull and because there was a lot of fur and but I guess I would say, if I had to make a good estimate of how wide the skull was, I would say 2 feet.
2
Just the
feet,
skull.
right?
Yeah, the skull.
And you,
Of
Well,
course.
I'll
you
tell
said,
you, John, we were talking
go ahead.
about this one
Yeah,
time, and he said to me, we had one of those large Rubbermaid bins that you'd like put Christmas ornaments in or whatever. And he
right,
said that head, if I chopped it off, might fit in there, maybe. And then he took a medium-sized ammo can and stuck it on the side of it, and he said that would be the muzzle. So like the muzzle wouldn't fit in there, but maybe the head would fit in the large Rubbermaid bin. So
right.
just for
Well,
context.
he said in his story that it took up almost his entire window, just the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be about 2 feet, and
With
almost as tall.
And then with all the fur and the mane and just made it
And
just
the
bigger,
ears and the muzzle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, it was massive. I'd say it had to be 10.5 feet minimum, because it was looking down, and I'm sitting at 9 feet in that truck,
right.
where my eye level is. So yeah, it's I bet you it weighed because I did get to see the whole body once. This happened in a minute, but
Right.
as I was looking at this thing,
When you saw
I
it
did,
later.
yeah, I saw it after, I was,
Right away.
I
Yeah,
had this,
let's not go into to that yet too much.
Okay.
But the important point that you brought up is this thing was so big that even though you were 9 feet off the ground in your rig, your cab, this thing had to crouch down to see inside, and its
Yeah.
head barely fit just in the circumference of the window itself. This thing was so
Yeah.
large.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
not.
I'll tell you, John, I ride
Mhm.
in that seat,
Uh-huh.
4 or 5 days a week. And I
Right.
think about this a lot. And, you are up so high, it makes, big pickup trucks look small, even.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
picture that thing ducking down to look in. And at the time, he said he was driving a day cab. Well, those have 2 windows in the back. And
Right.
he said it was blacking out that right back window and the entire passenger side window. So it wasn't just on the side. I mean, this thing was so massive that it blacked out that back window, which is totally behind you.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So it's just
huge.
hard to get your head around until you're sitting there and like,
Right.
thinking about these details.
Right, exactly. So Joe, what's your first reaction when you're driving down the road and you the first thing you see is this thing staring at you through the window, right? What what,
Yeah.
what was your reaction? What went through your head at that moment?
My blood run cold, and I got an instant adrenaline rush. You probably know what that's like. You get this metallic taste in your mouth.
Yeah. It's the
Um,
it's the physiological change of the fight or flight response.
and it was, it's instant. It's like boom, and
Hmm.
I've experienced it before. I was in the military,
Right.
and I've been in other situations besides military, that's been like that. So yeah, that's what happened immediately. And I didn't know what to make of it. A werewolf, first thing coming to you, because it looks like a werewolf. And if you've seen Van Helsing, I didn't never see that movie before I saw
Mhm.
this. But um, I had somebody was actually my sister was going through werewolf movies and seeing if I could match it up with anything.
Right.
I said, well, the closest thing that she brought up was the black one in Van Helsing.
Right.
That's not quite it, but it is the closest thing that I've seen, in movies.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's as far as the way it looked overall, I'd say that was 85% there, from
And
my
I've heard a lot of people say that same comment that it looked very much like the Van Helsing werewolf in their descriptions. If they had to
mm,
give a
yeah,
description of what best that it looked like that they've seen before, kind of thing.
mm, yeah, and I never even saw that movie before until I've seen it since this, but
Right.
I wasn't ever into horror movies or any of that. I never watched any of that stuff. I wasn't into it. I never was into cryptids or ghosts or nothing like that at all. Um, and now I'm like, you know, steeped up to my ears in it now since this because it's changed my life, and I can't get. I want to learn as much as I can,
Right.
and because I know I knew about Bigfoot, and that was, whatever, but took it to a whole like stratosphere level
Oh yeah.
when this happened to me. Um, so
Yeah, this will change
uh,
your view of reality in a very
yeah,
specific way.
and
And
it and it's
it's not the kind of thing you can just walk away from or ignore.
no, and I tell you, it's taken me down a long road of different pathways and layers and like of things, and it's just so much that you can uncover by looking into this that you start learning the truth about the world in general overall, and the real truth about everything,
Right.
believe it or not, just through digging into Dogman. If you want to go that far on into it, you can, and it'll branch off and everything's connected.
Right. Right.
Uh, it's yeah.
That's why I find it hard to believe that there are still people that just don't believe it. And at this point, I'm like, that's willful ignorance or cognitive dissonance, whatever you want to call it. I
Oh,
think
we're the
some
crazy
people,
ones. We're the crazy ones.
yeah. And it's like, I feel sorry for those people because when they're confronted with something like this, they are going to be truly shattered, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
I often make a quote from I have a degree in philosophy, and one of my favorite philosophers was Plato or Socrates. And one of the things that he said often was, the human brain can't know something unless you already know it. And what he means by that is that the way the human brain compartmentalizes information, that it's hard for the brain to accept something that it doesn't already have a base to understand. So if
Yeah,
you
you have to
have
be inoculated a little bit, you
that's it.
know?
You have to be conditioned in a sense. That's why the government, that's part of why the government reveals many of their secrets in things like movies and television. We know it's
Exactly.
it's for predictive programming, but it's also to get
Yep.
people to have somewhat of awareness when they do come across these things, what that
Yeah.
actually would be. I'm putting on the screen a picture, of from the Van Helsing movie of the werewolf. Um, Tell me which one of these. If Can you see the screen at all, or no? Or,
I
are
can,
y'all
yeah. Can you, Joe? Oh,
I,
yeah.
I, I,
That's
I can't see my screen for some
okay?
reason, but
I was trying to
that's
see
okay.
which one.
I know what it looks like better than anybody.
Right, right.
But yeah, I know
I
that
would
Van
say from
Helsing
his
one.
description to me, John, I
Mhm.
mean, he told me before, he said he saw that his sister told him to watch that Van Helsing movie. And he identified more with the black one, I think, because it was purely black, but that one's a little
Yeah,
more narrow. In my
Yeah,
opinion, this first, that gray one kind of matches the sort of the breadth of it a little bit better in the main and stuff. But yeah, kind of maybe a combo of the two.
these are all black. It's just the different lighting settings that
yeah.
it's under.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
but it's
Okay.
that they did have two in that one because they had one that they started off with, and then the girls, Kate Beckinsale's brother was infected with one, and that was the black one we see
Right.
in the after the opening of the movie. What's neat is I got to meet Kate Beckinsale in person.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, yeah. I met her at a Comic-Con when I was living in Hollywood. She was promoting the underwear. I was saying she was
Underwear,
promoting her
you
movie.
wish.
Well, I'll tell you what, she was drop dead gorgeous. I still remember every single
I
thing she was
bet.
wearing that day. And she was newly married to Lynn Wiseman, who was the director of that film. And it's
Okay.
funny because I've got friends that work in Hollywood, and they told me Lynn Wiseman he worked on the art department, I believe, for the Independence Day movie, the alien invasion movie that was so successful. And so that launched his career. And from that, he ended up becoming a director, which, by the way, is very hard to do, even though that's what James Cameron did as well. But it's very hard to switch gears like that. You kind of get typecast where you break in the business. It's very hard to break out. But I was told that
What
the producers hated Lynn Wiseman, but they loved the idea of a movie of werewolves against vampires, and so that's why they said they gave him the movie. So, but it
oh.
turned out to be great, and I met her after they were just married for the first time, and they were promoting the film, and but sadly they divorced later. But yeah, that was
Well,
my
let
little
me
thing.
ask you, John, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts and feelings? I mean, I have my own, but as far as the CCA and the CIA and this whole relationship with Hollywood, that sounds like
Oh,
the CCA is sort of the go
look,
between the CIA and Hollywood.
I don't like saying
And
the agency letters too much
oh,
because
sorry,
I can
sorry.
tell
I'm
you.
just talking about
No, no,
Sesame
it's okay.
Street. So,
That's it. Right, right. Here's the thing most people don't know. I spent some time in SF military intelligence, and they told us a whole lot of stuff that changed my views on the world quickly. One of them
yeah.
was, and it was the original intelligence agencies that gave the money to the telecom companies to switch from analog to digital. So remember when we had the old rotary phones to the push
Yep.
button.
Yeah, oh yeah, I do.
And that was because they started hubs where they were monitoring all communications from that point on. And
Well,
other
that's what my
agents.
question, I guess, was leading to, is how, like, I
So,
believe that they say these are the narratives that need to
yep,
be pushed, and
that's
you
it.
can use your creative forces, but
That's it.
I
So
don't know.
all electronic communication is recorded. Nothing is deleted. Anything you say anywhere, there will be a record of it. I'm sure there's cracks in the system. There always are, and there's certain limitations, especially in the past. But now they gave us names. If you go watch for the audience, if you're curious about this topic, if you go watch the Born Identity movie, where in one of the later, I think it was like maybe the third one, I think it was second or third one. It's been a while since I've seen them. But in that
Yeah.
movie, it starts off with a reporter gets information that's too hot for him to know. He gets on the phone and starts talking about it. A computer system picks up what he's saying and flags. It's called a red flag program, and it gets a case agent at the intelligence agency. The case agent's listening on the other end of the phone. He hears what the reporter's talking about, and he says, "Hey, this reporter knows too much. We gotta eliminate this threat." So they send a team to go get rid of and remove the reporter. Okay, they named, and if you go watch that or go back and look at it, they named the exact name of the program, which I won't say, but I was taught about when I was in my section. And this was a very real program, and it would monitor. It did a red flag program. If you said any combinations of words, or if you said like direct letter agencies and stuff like that, it would start a red flag program that would get a case officer to come in and investigate. They've got different threat levels, and they know what they're looking for. So, our level's not that big of a deal, but still, just to be cautious, I don't spell out those words. I don't say them. I just
I'm sorry
refer
about
to.
that.
No, not at all. Not you don't. You had no idea, but I just refer to the agency. But you're
Right.
absolutely right. Let me put it this way: J.F. Kennedy said that agency was evil, and
Yep.
they did not have the interest of the United States or its people in mind, but their own selfish agenda and interest. And he said that he was going to destroy that agency and
To
disband them.
1,000 pieces.
Yeah, that's right. And he was going to disband them. He put forth paperwork to start that process. Now, here's one little problem, though. That agency, their specialty is infiltration and assassination and
Right.
taking over governments from the inside. Okay.
Right.
So he's dead and they're still here. So that tells you everything you need to know.
That's right.
Everything. Now,
You know,
I
Rose
believe,
McGowan, sorry.
yeah, no,
I was
I
just
know
gonna say
Rose
Rose
McGowan.
McGowan talks a lot about these, agencies and
Yeah,
these
you know why? Because
connections.
she came up through ritualistic abuse. That's why, which
Right.
is all part of
Right.
that. It's all a part of
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
In fact, that article I put on earlier that I showed up here, if I can find it again, this one, it goes into that. Yeah, I mean, occult organizations in our government and our highest elites. In this article goes on to say that Maxine, what's her name? The right hand woman to
Ghislaine Maxwell.
yeah, her.
Ghislaine
She actually had
Maxwell.
a
Yeah.
yeah, she had a license from the government to be able to drive submarines. Why would this
Okay,
civilian
I did
woman
hear that. Yeah.
need to be able
Yep.
to operate submarines? And they
Yeah.
consequently had, this article also goes into the military, the US military had a submarine base only a few miles from that location. Do you think any of that's an accident or coincidence? No,
No.
no,
Don't believe in
it's
them.
not.
So no.
Right.
Yeah.
So the problem is, I mean, like the government has been saying recently, oh, we need to bring in these, we need to go cashless in our society so that we can stop child trafficking. No, they're not going to stop child
No.
trafficking because they are the child traffickers.
Right.
When
Yeah.
when Jim Caviezel did his episode with Sean Ryan on his show about the trafficking. Guess what? That show got me demonetized. Why? Why would you demonetize that? Then Fox News was saying it was a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. But who owns Fox News? There's the problem. Who owns CNN? There's your problem. Stop listening to mainstream media.
Same owner.
Same
Starts
owner.
with an R.
Yeah, they own all the media. In fact, one thing I was taught also in my unit was that the government controls all mainstream media. I mean, there's people that work there for the government full time and working. And not only that, you know, it used to be in America, we had a real sense of journalism and freedom of the press. That's gone. That's gone. On your mainstream media, there's no such thing as journalism. It's one-sided propaganda. Not to mention, the government actually changed the law, literally changed the law in the United States so that they could make it legal to give you propaganda. That used to be illegal in the US, and they changed that law. They changed that law. Now it is completely legal for them to straight out lie to you for the sake of pushing only their side of an agenda. They changed the law so they could do it. So that is definitely sickening. There's all kinds of connections between the agencies and Hollywood and many of the things that come out, like the movie Stargate. There are so many whistleblowers that say that was based on reality. Now it was theorized for the movie, so it doesn't mean every detail was right, but all in all, that event took place and happened in our government, and they've got that Stargate technology. We have all of that. And I mean, you can dial in a Stargate to go from here to Alaska. You can dial in a Stargate to go from here to Mars. You can potentially, I haven't done it. You can dial in a Stargate to go to a different time, or you can dial in a Stargate to go to a different galaxy. You know, they found pyramids that match the 3 pyramids of Giza to a perfect mathematical match, size, height, and distance on Mars as they did to on planet Earth.
Wow.
They're perfect.
And what does that mimic?
Well, I say this.
Orion's belt.
That's true too. And that goes into another laundry list of theories. But I say the only reason that's possible is because those were Stargates. And here's another thing. People don't understand this. We think of Egypt and like South America as having pyramids. No. The whole world is full of pyramids. The United States has many pyramids in it, including Alaska has a giant, one of the biggest pyramids ever found is buried under the ground in Alaska. And you've got pyramids in all across the United States. They just keep them hush hush, and a lot of them have been covered over with dirt and ground and all, so they don't talk about it.
Yeah, I know China did that. They covered a huge one there with shrubbery and trees, and they will not allow it to be dug. So
you're right. They do a lot of predictive programming and stuff in the films. Why do you think every show now has to be, you have to have your token your token, I don't even know how to say it. You have to have your token, you can't have a show that you don't have every token race in there. Every show now has to be mixed family races, and that's fine. I don't have any trouble with the mixed family race, but the problem is when you're saying that's the only thing, the only norm, well, that's a problem. That's agenda.
Right.
That's agenda, and that's racist.
Or orientation, your sexual orientation.
Yeah, and sexual orientation.
Or your preference, whatever it is. There's
you cannot have a show now. Yeah, it's impossible to have a show where they don't have sexual orientation. And why is that? That's for programming. Why do you think that for years in entertainment and movies and television, they would say this? Oh, such and such is that persuasion. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like people always have to say that. Like it's illegal. It's become almost illegal for you to say, you know what? As an independent thinking person, I think that that's not good and not right for society. And I have a problem with it. It's not healthy.
Right.
Well,
then it's hate speech.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But you know what else it is? It's also the destruction of society. You know, if you, I always say this: if you want to know if something's good and holy versus something that's bad or wrong, is it life giving? Does it create life? If it creates life, if it's life giving, it's good. If it's life taking, then it's bad. That's that
Yeah.
simple. That's some, and another thing is, not to harp on this, but it's worth making. The United States was built on Christian principles, and the majority, overwhelming majority of the country was Christian to some degree, and we could unite on that. The problem is by removing Christianity from schools, removing it from government, removing it from the workplace, what they've done is replaced it with a whole different agenda, you know,
Yeah.
and to the point now where, oh, if you're a Christian, you're just a bigot, or you're just you're just phobic on, pick what your cardophobia is. You're just
Or
wrong
you're
now.
stupid, right?
Oh,
You're
or here's
stupid
a
because you believe
yeah,
this,
or here's
man. And they always say the bearded man and the fluffy cloud, as if that's what any of us are
right,
purporting it to be.
right,
You
yeah.
know, it's
They
just
give
it's
a
just to degrade it and undermine it as much as
in,
possible.
in films and television. They're giving their vision of what they want you to culturally accept as a norm. Like, for example, look at Disney Channel right now. It's a perfect example of this. Disney Channel, oh my gosh, I swear, this gives me migraines about Disney, but Disney Channel does something really evil and bad. They take our favorite and most popular creative works out there, like Avengers, like Star Wars, like X-Men, and things like along those lines. They just
Mhm.
say, hey, we're going to buy whatever's the most popular or loved by the culture and society. And then we're going to take it and we're going to twist it to where it just matches our own personal agenda. And
Right.
then they get angry when their films start bombing at the box office, because this is not what we come to know, love, or expect, but they're saying, y'all are racist. You, the
Yeah.
problem is toxic fans. The fans are so toxic. We knew some of the fans would be toxic. It's not toxic fans. It's how
Right.
dare you? These people don't care about film. They don't care about the fans. They don't care about the content of the work. All they care about is, how can we shove this into our personal agenda and force feed it into your face? That's all they
Yeah.
care about.
It's obvious that they don't even care about making the money either,
No, no.
because
In fact,
they're
you're right.
cut their own. They know they're cutting their own throat,
You're right.
but they're pushing that agenda anyway.
Yeah,
You know.
so Bob Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, you would think, oh man, if any CEO lost as much money, like what, almost over $1 billion for Disney in
Yeah.
2023, then the board would fire that person immediately. The reason
Oh
why the
yeah.
board hasn't fired him is, look who owns Disney: BlackRock,
Yeah.
Vanguard, and those on that level, right? Those are all the
Yeah.
ones pushing those agendas. Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy are doing exactly what their bosses are
Hmm.
telling them to do, because it's an
Yeah.
agenda. And they
The
say,
banks.
oh, we're not pushing an agenda. Wow, they're pushing an agenda.
Yeah. The
Right. I
biggest
don't know
banks.
the guy's name. I didn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you back?
Oh,
Okay, gotcha.
Corporations
we must have
and
lost him.
It's okay. Go ahead,
yeah.
I'll
Jeff.
get him back. I was
Um.
just gonna say I don't know the man's name. I may recognize it if I saw it, but I just saw a clip. I don't know if you've ever seen that Fall of the Cabal series on Rumble.
Oh
Which, by
no,
the
it
way,
sounds
the
good.
woman that put that all together, her first name's Janet. She's got a Scandinavian last name, and I can't pronounce it. But anyhow, you can find it if you just look up Fall of the Cabal. It's a series. She um, supposedly about a month and a half ago, I don't know how to say this on YouTube, took her own life, I guess. I don't know the proper
Oh,
way to say it.
that's horrible. Yeah.
Um, but uh, which I don't believe, and I'm sure nobody does. But anyway, on that series, she shows a clip, several of like Yuval Harari, Klaus Schwab, but she also shows a clip of somebody representing BlackRock. And he said, "We're here to change minds, and that's what we intend to do. That's what
That's
we
it.
do." I mean,
That's it.
it's like
Well,
they tell you straight out.
and unfortunately,
You listen to what these people are saying, they tell you what they're doing, you know?
no, that's right. You got to listen to them because they tell, just like Carl Schwab in the World Economic Forum. You got to listen to what these pay. Neil Harari. You got to listen to what they say because they're telling you exactly what they're planning to do to us, and they do it. They do it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's huge.
Let
But
me
yeah,
try to get Joe back on here.
oh, is he
Are
on?
you on here?
Yeah,
He's
I'm here.
Okay.
he's there.
Yeah, I think I just cut out for a second.
Okay.
Hmm.
His
Someone
avatar
in the
went away, but that
audience.
doesn't matter.
Someone,
Yeah.
one of the comments in the audience says, "Preach, Jenny, preach."
Oh, don't even get me
Oh,
started.
oh,
But look,
don't turn her loose. She'll go a mile
Oh
a minute.
wow. But
but
it's just so true, and it's tragic
and
because
Yeah,
unfortunately, it does change and affect young minds, and that's why they're doing it. That's why they're doing it.
yeah,
Hitler said,
Mhm.
"Give me a camera and the microphone and the young, and I'll change the world." And that's
That's
exactly what's happening.
exactly that's
That's
exactly
exactly,
right. I was just gonna say that all you gotta do is look at that model. And
yeah,
he went
and
after the
it's
youth,
if
and
you
that's
look.
what they're doing here
Not
and
only
been
that,
doing.
if you look at marriages and divorce rates, especially of the young today, it's at insanity. Let me put it this way. It's not just insanity. It's at the point that our nation will not survive. Will not
Right.
survive. So if you keep following the views of Disney and the mainstream media and the ones that are pushing all this dren, like you just said, BlackRock and all those guys, Vanguard, our country cannot survive in the future. And people don't understand that. This is about survival. And to quote my favorite quote from JF Kennedy, there is no point in our country surviving into the future if our values do not survive along with it. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. That's just like
absolutely.
in The Walking Dead. I always tell people when we would like to have watching parties for that and stuff, I told people there's no point in humanity. The real evil people in The Walking Dead are not the walkers or the zombies. It was the people and the way the people treated
Right.
each other. And I told them
Yeah.
if it doesn't matter how hard times get, if our humanity cannot survive, then there's no purpose in us surviving as a species. We
Right.
have
Exactly
to
right.
preserve our
And
humanity.
frankly, the globalists aren't too worried about that, right? Like they're trying to take out 7.5 billion people. So,
That's
they
it.
want they want us to do that job for them.
They want us to. They're trying to turn us against ourselves to do their job. That's what they're
Yeah.
masters of. That's
Yeah.
what they're doing. But
Well,
but
and to
anyway,
Yeah,
get to the root of all of that, and you know this better than anyone, John, it's because of the master they serve. That's really, in the end, what it all boils down to. The secret
right.
societies, and though that's who's these people are. They're all part of these, these societies, and that we're not supposed to be able to know about. It baffles my mind how people are always saying, well, low level, I don't know if I can say it on here, but mason
Yeah, be
jars,
careful. Yeah. Well,
they're not involved in that. They do
and
community work. Okay, that's fine. But how do I know this information and they don't? I don't.
right.
That boggles my
And
mind.
the problem is these secret societies. Their goal and agenda is to destroy the United States forever, destroy Constitution, liberty, freedoms for all people, so that they can
Right.
bring in a one world government. That's why I call them
Right.
globalists.
And to
And
seat the Antichrist, in my opinion. But
and
I could be
the head
wrong. But
according to the Bible and Bible prophecy, the one world government will come to power by destroying this world, probably in a nuclear war, and then they will create a one world government, and the head of that will be the Antichrist, foretold to come
yeah,
in sacred scripture. But let's
I
get back
can't
to the
wait to
story.
see your video on it.
Yeah, well, not only am I doing a video on that, I had a lot of people know I talk about it a lot, but I had Rob Skiba that was going to be coming on my show because after I did my research on the identity of the Antichrist, Rob Skiba, and I do a 3-hour lecture on that. Rob Skiba, I discovered him, and he did the same thing, and he did it in a much better, more elegant way than I did, more analytical way. And I was blown away by him. I reached out to him, and he said he would come on my show to do an interview about, so we could compare notes on how he came to that conclusion, or how we did on the identity of the Antichrist. He died right before coming on my show. Literally,
Yeah.
I still got his email. He said, "Listen, I'm going to this conference, and as soon as I'm done, I'll work out a time where we can work a schedule to come on your show." And I'm like, "Okay, great." He got sick in that conference and didn't make it.
Do you think
And
that was
I think he was murdered.
above like a
Yeah.
natural
No,
situation,
I
or
don't think it was natural at all. And I talked to his son. His son doesn't think it was natural either. And his son is trying to start a show to continue on the legacy of his father and his father's work. And he's coming on my show, I believe, next. So
oh, good. Then
Oh,
we'll have
that'll
to
be
all
good.
make sure we go and support him too. So
yeah, he's got a
Yeah.
new show just starting out,
Mhm.
and I'm thankful to him for being willing to come on my show. And he's already, I think he said he's already like did an interview on Eddie Bravo's show. So that's pretty
oh
big.
wow,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
Is
Mm,
pretty
that
yeah.
the
big.
guy who was on with Joe Rogan for a while, or
Yeah, Eddie Bravo, he's huge.
okay?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
big time. But look, let's get back to
Yeah.
the story. So
I know. Sorry.
I
Well,
got to
the
apologize to the audience because I knew Joe had a tendency of going off topic on tangents, but I suffer from the same disease. So, um, but anyway, so bringing us back, um, Joe, so you realize that there's this, for lack of a better word, the first thing you said that came to your mind was this werewolf as you're going down the road in your semi 18 wheeler pickup truck. You see out of this window. Now you happen to have your window down at the time. Is that right? Is that because you were just
right.
getting back on the road? Why was your window down?
It was just a nice day. It was perfect,
Okay.
temperature, and didn't need the air on,
I
or
can hear him on
anything.
the other room, but I can't hear him through the video.
Oh, it's okay. I can
And
hear him. I can hear him. So
oh,
that's
oh,
good.
okay, good.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, I had the windows down because it's June. It's just perfect temperature, and it was just
Right.
nice. And it's nice to not have heat or air on, and just
Oh,
the weather
sure.
was perfect.
I thought I theorized since you had just stopped to work on the vehicle, you might have been listening to see if there was any strange sounds or anything as you were starting back up, you know.
Well, they were already down. I had them down
Okay.
already while I was on the road.
All right.
And so yeah, they were down as we were going up this hill. Of course, I can't get. I just wish I could have. I was trying to, push the pedal through the floorboard, but that's all I'm getting, right?
Right.
Um, and that's all I know is I'm not going to go any faster. He's keeping up with me like he's just strolling through the park, like with
Right.
no effort, just fluidly moving, like almost cat-like.
Hmm.
Very, very fluid and graceful,
Right.
and he's looking in the cab. His eyes are darting all over the place, looking at me, darting everywhere. And I, at the time, I didn't think about it the first thing, but I was thinking about rolling up the windows, and I'm like, that's not going to help. And a million things go through your mind. And his hand is coming in, which looks like a massive raccoon claw hand, and with claws that are 3 inches long or so. And he's trying to grab at my door handle. My my doors were locked, but and there was a few scratches from his claws on my door, um, near where my door handle was. I saw that afterwards, and he ripped the rubber a little bit on the top of the where the window, seal is, and scratched the top of it somewhat too. And I'm thinking he's trying to get at me, and the way he's looking at me, and just the overall just intent look on the face of this, which was not animalistic looking, even though it looks like an animal. The eyes, there was intelligence there. It was thinking. It was like almost looking into another person. Not an animal. There was more there than animal. Like a dog, you see a dog, and there's something there, but it's not what you would call a level of intelligence that would be that high, very high at all, and which is in like almost any animal, really. Um, and compared to a human, I would say this was closer to human than an animal, as far as the eye contact and what it can convey through looking at you. And I don't know if it was trying to communicate. Some people talk about, there's telepathy or mind speech speaking or something. I don't know if that's what I got or not, but I got the feeling that, it was telling me, or if I was getting it from him, or it was just me thinking it, it was like, I'm going to get at you and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just, you're like screwed, because I got you, but that's when I thought about a, the gun I have in the truck. I do have a CPL. I've had a license to carry for many, many years, and I've always carried. And and I actually didn't have it on my belt at that time because it's summer and it's a lot harder to hide a gun in the summertime. But I wanted to have it with me in the truck, so I had it strapped. I had it strapped on the side of my seat in between my cooler and my seat, around the base of my seat, and I had it in there really tight and secure so it didn't move when I pulled it, put it in a holster. And I pulled that gun, and he couldn't see it. That werewolf could not see it the way I have it. I made sure, and I had a little rag to, throw over it in case, I needed to or whatever to hide it. But I pulled it, so fast. And it's like that what thought come in my mind is like, oh, you think so? Okay, well, watch this. And boom, boom. It was like two shots. I have a 45 Colt revolver, and two shots go right into his head. He saw it. He saw me whip it out, and I think there was an instant there where he thought, oh, uh-oh, and then but that's all. And then that was it. And he went down like he hit a clothesline. Just he was down like instantly down. Um, and that 45 Colt, I should mention too. I have the cartridges I have in that are not just off the shelf cowboy loads or anything. The gun I had is it was a 45 Colt 410 shotgun shell. Was what it could take. It's a Smith and Wesson Governor, and Taurus judges also are the same. Take the same cartridges. So um, those rounds that I had in that gun were called maximum expansion, made by Lehigh Defense, and they are long, really elongated bullets because of the capability to accept long shotgun shells. You can make real long 45 Colt bullets, and that bullet had a very deep cavernous hollow point, which is that bullet probably overall is like an inch and a half long, just the bullet without the case, and then it has a cross cut in it, and it's and when that cross cut stays intact if through any bone or any hard medium or anything, but when it hits soft tissue, the hydraulic pressure fans it out like a blade, like a fan blade or a broadhead or something, and you got four sharp, and it's solid copper, and it has four sharp like Cuisinart blades just, going through at the same time, so, and I think the copper is another key element in this, so to speak, as far as being poison to what I believe these things are too.
And where have you heard that before? What gave you that idea?
Oh, I didn't know that at first. I had no idea, but a lot of people that I've learned a lot of biblical prophecies and um, Nephilim and giants and things. Quite a few people that are more well versed in it have mentioned that to me. I think at least a dozen people, and I've looked into it too myself, and I do believe these come from,
I think
you
we heard
know,
it on your show too, John.
we did hear it from you too as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I don't talk about it a whole lot, but that is something I have heard. I first heard that from Stephen Quayle and his crew, that they talked about that from ancient biblical prophecies and said that they heard it also from Indian uh, stories of Native Americans that dealt with giants back in the day. So that's where I got that from.
Yeah, I've got it from several sources that are really steeped in very, uncovering just every little detail of the of like Enoch and these other books that a lot of people don't know a lot about, and and I just believe that it just fits because one of the things I've come out to talk about this is because at that time, this is before this. I didn't really when was it? 7, 8 years ago. You didn't see much when I first started researching this. There wasn't a whole lot about Dogman. It was there, but there wasn't much out there about it. But as I was looking into it and hearing stories and different people's accounts, I heard people shooting them and shooting at them, and they weren't with no effect or very little or
Right,
not killing them. And I'm like, man, I dropped mine like a bushel bag of potatoes. I mean,
right.
but I think you got here. You got the copper, but the bullet in the placement, I think, went into the eye, got into the
Yeah,
brain.
I would
You
argue,
know,
yeah, regardless of the copper issue, if you hit
yeah.
something at that point blank of a range, I mean, that was a very, very powerful round.
Oh
And if you
yeah,
hit anything through soft tissue, especially at that range, that would be the case.
And those
yeah,
things are
yeah,
nasty. They're nasty.
With the
yeah.
werewolves?
That too,
Those
but
rounds.
these rounds. That's why I actually ordered those because I didn't have them in there with any clue that I would have to use them for that. It
Right.
was it was I was thinking, well, if I need to use my gun, I want the most lethal rounds I can find, right?
Sure, sure.
And I actually had a Smith and Wesson Governor, and I found those rounds, and I saw the ballistic tests on them, and they were extremely wicked, you know.
Right.
And not that I'm wicked, I don't want it to ever have to shoot anybody, but I mean, if
Mhm.
if it ever came to that, I mean, I want it to be the most effective it can be, and that's why I had those, you know.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so it wasn't not because they were just copper or anything for Dogman or anything. It was just maybe it was some kind of maybe God and the Lord has been at my side in that decision making process to have that gun at my side because he knew that was coming. I don't know, but
Right.
uh,
Yeah, well,
you
I did
don't
another
know.
show. I did another show on my other channel on my Bush Braven with a B. People are saying they're coming up with different
Yeah.
spellings. Braven like a brave Indian, if you will. But Braven Bushcraft on my other channel I just started, and I did an episode today, and on there I was explaining how military and law enforcement live by one important rule of always prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. But if you're prepared for that 20% of the time, as opposed to 80% of the time, you can't be prepared for everything, but you're mostly covered most of the time. If we train for that 20%. So be
Yeah.
prepared for the worst and hope for the best. But we always prepare for the worst.
And that's
And
Joe in
Yeah.
the nutshell. I mean,
that's it.
that's him, how he conducts his life anyway.
That's it. And
You
so
know,
that's why you're alive talking to us today, right now. And the thing is, we all hope that we never have to encounter situations like that or, you know, but you never know what's going to happen or what situation you're going to find yourself in. I hope to
And that
God I
was
never run into one of these creatures, but
I,
you never know.
that was the furthest thing from my mind when I had this gun in my truck with the kind of loads I had in it. I wasn't for. I would have never even entertained that thought even a little bit. I mean, I just had it because I thought it was just a good gun and round to have on me.
Right.
For protection. From people. Just you know,
Absolutely.
not anything else. Maybe
And
it,
going back, you said, you talked about I believe personally that all of us, I think it's a human condition that we all have what people would refer to as like mental telepathy or ESP for lack of a better word. I think that's just part of the human condition that we all have that. The problem is I don't think we train on it to where we recognize it as that or learn how to develop that skill or so to speak, you know what I mean? But I think we all
yeah,
have that a bit innate ability in us, and that's why I also think these create. Now here's something else. I read a story, uh, I've read this a few times, that the military was talking about how they wanted to come up with their super soldier programs. And in the super soldier programs, they gave laundry lists for what their goals were to achieve. They said that they wanted to create a soldier that had super hearing, super smell, super sight, super taste. All right. They wanted a super soldier that could run for a large number of miles without having to slow down or stop or get tired. They wanted a super soldier that was strong enough they could pick up a car. They wanted a super soldier that could literally over a house, literally jump over a house if need be. So,
I
and
think
they
these
wanted what's that?
I think these things check all those boxes.
That's it. And
From
the last thing
Yeah,
on the box, the last thing on that box is they said they wanted their super soldiers to be able to have communication with each other without having to rely on radio communications or comms. So,
mhm,
what is that?
yeah, yeah,
There's no other explanation for what that is. So
right.
I do believe, and there are other whistleblowers in this field, like I bring up Victor on Jeff Nadalny's channel, and Victor claims he didn't say this directly, but he says they do have a way to communicate, and he wouldn't go any further on what that is. They do. They don't have vocal cords other than their howling, but they do have a way to communicate. So what way is that? I believe it's that. So whenever I talk to people that have had these encounters, almost always they get a feeling of something that this thing, either its intentions or something is trying to tell you. All right, and that comes
Yeah,
across almost every time, whether people understand it or not. It's instinctual. They get it. Like when I talked to Volt about his encounter with his military team, or contractor team, I should rather say. He Volt said that when he got cornered by the Dogman in his story, he said that he literally heard this voice playing in his head, saying, teasing him, saying, "Ha ha, I've got you, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm gonna get you, and there's nothing you can do about it." Does
that's
that
the
sound
same
familiar?
same thing I thought. You know,
Yep. Right.
same thing. Maybe it was something that I wasn't sure. I just know that's the feeling I was getting,
Right.
and what the thoughts that were going into my head at that point, and I was like, yeah, okay, well, let's see about that. Type of
Right.
reaction. because I went into fight mode then because I remembered my gun. So I was like, I was flight first, and it was like, no, I gotta fight.
Right.
That's all I have to do, and I do have a tool for that. Not the best one, but it worked fine.
Right. So, so when you shot it, tell us what happened from that point.
Okay. When I when I saw it, go down, and after I fired twice at it, of course, when you shoot, uh, a a gun, especially, something that's a 45 or higher powered gun like that, it's pretty loud inside of a cab,
Absolutely.
you know how that is. You kind of go in your ears just are ringing like crazy, and of course I was confused about what just happened. I thought I was in the twilight zone. I had no idea what is going on in my world right now. And I was still driving the truck, and as he went down, I looked in my mirror to see. And you can see quite a bit in those mirrors on the side. I could see his whole body pretty much. He was on the ground sliding. His limbs were stiffened out, like a brain hit would do. Is like I've seen that happen before. Hitting an animal in the brain. They'll You hit them in the neck, they'll usually just fold up, or you hit them in the brain, they might stiffen out. But yeah, and as I was looking at him, and the weeds were getting whacked over, knocked over, and he was plowing through the weeds and sliding and rolled over a bit, and I could see that he had arms, similar to humans. They were really long, super long, or in relation to the rest of them, than a normal wolf would be, plus the hands and the forearms, and um, had a barrel-like chest, but similar to a human at the same time, kind of both. Had a long about a 5 foot tail that was bushy. Feet and legs from like the knee down were like a dog or a wolf, and the the feet were really huge and elongated, but I would say they were a saucer size of a saucer plate, his feet. And after I had seen that, I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? As a werewolf, and just tried to attack me, and I'm thinking, okay, let me get myself together a little bit here, and I'm still going slow up this hill, and I'm like, okay, I'm safe at the moment, I think. So I'm thinking that, and then as get up to almost to the top of the hill, I remember there's a turnaround up ahead at a little roadside picnic area. It could be a turnaround. It wasn't made for a semi to turn around, but it would be big enough. I thought, because I'm going to turn around just to make sure I'm not crazy. And that this did happen. I'm going to go back there, and if it's still there, I'm going to I'm going to run it over with this truck and make sure it's dead. And then I'm going to, whatever consequences. I wasn't even worried about that. I'm sure it would have tore the truck up and everything, but it would have been dead for sure if it was just wounded. I'm pretty sure it was dead by what I saw, but I just wanted to mostly see what it this thing looked like, and this really did happen. And I turned around, and there, of course, there was tree limbs and everything, but I was knocking away and stuff because that's not made for something that tall go through there, but they weren't big enough that would mess my truck up at all. So I turned around, I started coming back down the hill. It's just probably 4 minutes later I got back there, maybe 4 minutes, five tops, and there was people there. in a Jeep, pulled over right where that thing was laying. It's gone now. I see where it had slid, but then the slide is stopped. But it was still weeds being like drag marks all the way into the woods now, where you can't see. Or I don't know if it pulled itself in there, what happened at the time, if it got back up and pulled itself into the woods. But I pulled over. I was concerned about those people. I'm like, what is happening? And now we got people here, and that thing's gone. I am so like, uh, I'm so confused and don't even know what to think about anything in life right now. And I said, "Are you guys okay? You need anything? You need help? Are you stranded or anything?" I was afraid they were going to get attacked by this wounded werewolf, and I couldn't figure out why they would be there. And they looked at me like, "What are you stopping for?" That's weird that you stop and ask us, what and anything. And yeah, we're fine. We just thought we saw a few. I said, "Is there a problem?" He said, "Well, there was a little scuffle here with a few bears or something, and we were just checking it out." But I was looking in the Jeep across the street, and I could see a shotgun was in the back seat. From my vantage point, I could look down and see it. They had it ready, just to reach in and grab if needed. And okay, I'm thinking that's whatever. I get it. You want to have a shotgun, that's okay, but just seemed weird. And then that was pretty much the extent of that. There's more to the story, as time went on, more things unfolded, and I become aware of more of what the truth is of what actually occurred. But I did make it home okay, and I was a zombie for like a week. I didn't tell anybody. I just kind of did my usual routine, going to work and doing my job. But I didn't remember hardly anything, for like a week. It was just I was, I guess, fractured a little bit, there for a minute. But I got it together and came around, started looking into it, figuring out what happened, what it was, and it's still an ongoing process to this day. And that was, it was like 7 to 8 years ago now. So
Right.
yeah, and I never talked about it to anybody for a good year, and I finally talked to my sister about it, and she said so. And then um, I didn't know what if she'd heard of him or anything. And as soon as I just mentioned, "Have you ever heard of a dog man?" And she says, "Oh yeah, I've heard of him." And I told her I saw one. She said, "Those things are real," because she knows if tell her, so she believes it like right away. I'm like, "Yeah, they're real." And I told her the story, and she says, "Man, you got to you got to get this out, and you got to talk about it and get it out there." So I did. I had I talked to. It was just a little while after that. I went and I talked to. I was listening to people at the time that the shows that was learning from, and I reached out to Lance Hightower, and I talked to him for a while, and he said, "I'd like to narrate your story on my show." So I said, "Fine, take notes, do what you want." So he did, and he did a very good job with it. And it wasn't long after that, a few months after that, maybe, I get pulled into a way station, and the state police are holding me there, and I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on. They pull me around back, and I get out, and I got my all my certifications and logbooks, everything, because I that's usually what they do is they want to look at that stuff, see if everything's legal and everything. And I was going in there, said, "No, we're not gonna inspect you or anything. We were instructed to." hold you here for federal authorities. I'm like, oh, really? Okay, so that's a wild thing there. I didn't have any idea what that would be about. So as I waited there, I'm like, I have two guns on me. I'm like, I didn't know what was going to happen. So I put one behind my CB, the pistol, and then, and then put it back in place. And I had a rifle too, but I couldn't really hide that too well. But anyway, they got there, and the first thing they started doing was intimidating me. And I said, "Whoa, wait, what did I do?" They said, "You know what you did." I'm like, "No." What is it? Something I hauled something illegal? They're like, "No, hey, you know what it is. You killed our asset, and we're going to tell you this is not acceptable. You're not going to talk about it again." I said, "I never talked about it, but we know you did it. So, and we know you talked, and so this is how things are going to be. We can make your life miserable. We can do this, we can do that, and whatever." They took my phone, found my gun, took my rifle, took that, giving my phone back after, about 10 minutes of all this, for 10, 15 minutes of all this back and forth, and trying to keep them from, jumping down my throat over, saving my own skin with their monster, and I said, "Well, who are you guys? I know you got authority somehow because you got the state police to stop me, but what are you doing? What is the story here?" And well, this is just a matter of homeland security, and they flipped me some kind of, I don't know, thing that supposed to look official. I don't know what I'm looking at. I guess it is, but that's what they told me, and they had no regard for saving my own skin when in a situation like that. It's like they were so mad about their werewolf being killed. So that worked for a while. I didn't talk about it for another 4 years at all. And they did do some stuff. They just show me that they weren't playing around. Well, for one thing, they took my rifle, which was, you know, it was a rifle that I liked, and it wasn't cheap, and that was like, that was wrong. But anyway, um, 4 years later, I went to the first Dogman conference that I've, some people had, I
That was
knew
in
it.
Tennessee. I was there.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I saw you there. I just didn't.
Why
Yeah,
didn't you come
I
talk to
mean,
me?
I didn't. It's how things are when you get in those. I saw you. It wasn't like I was next to you. I saw you from like across away a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that's John Bell. I'm gonna go introduce myself, and then, but I got busy. Something happened, and I went looking for you again, and I didn't see you. I don't know, but anyway, I missed the chance. But I
That
did
was
see you
weird.
there.
That was like the
Yeah.
first time I've been somewhere and like 20 different people asked me for my autograph, and I'm like, what? That was
Yeah, yeah, I would have been one of the ones that walked up to you. I missed it. I saw you there, but I didn't. But then I lost track of where you were, so I don't know what happened. Yeah, I think Jenny intercepted me is what happened. Rachel.
it's her fault.
Yeah, yeah. hmm I blame it on her, I guess. But no, it was a good time, and I learned a lot there, and a lot of things, the good things have happened since then, and I talked to a lot of people in this that do this topic in this space, cryptids and things, and I've learned so much, and I have gained so many friends, and feel so much better, and my nightmares have like ceased to almost nothing. Like I used to have them quite often, and not so much anymore. And but anyway, getting back to
Well, I
the
tell you, it makes it when I said earlier at the beginning of the show that when I heard this story that boiled my blood. I mean, just imagine this for a minute that the audience, like, you have this hair-raising encounter with this just unworldly beast that you don't have an explanation for this. You don't understand what's going on. But then all of a sudden you have the government coming up and telling you that they're mad at you and they're threatening you
Yeah,
because
they.
you killed their assets.
Oh yeah,
So
they
they're
put
they're
it's
mad you're
ridiculous.
alive.
Yeah, they're mad that I'm alive, but I think they were more mad that I killed it because I think they had plans for it or they had a lot of money in it. I don't know what it is,
Both.
but it was they were hot about it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and they were like, we do not want this story out there. Just
Right.
you know, um, and so and it worked for a while, but I did start talking about it, and I was like, this is too important to not talk about it. I didn't go there with the intentions. I just a lot of people convinced me that I should share, and they're right, you know,
Yeah,
they're
well,
right.
I'm certainly glad you came to that conclusion despite their threats and
Yeah,
aggravation. But yeah, it's just insane to me that these people would get mad that you killed their asset because it didn't kill you. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, I would have
right.
gotten out. I mean, they would have had to arrest me and drag me off at that point. I mean, that's
Well,
just
I know I was like, yeah, well, I was beside myself. They kind of caught me off guard too, They do that on purpose. Catch you off guard, get you, kind of not on your game the way you should be. I always thought I was there for a totally different reason, until till they said, yeah, I killed their asset. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, killed what? The only thing oh, okay. Now I know what this is about. And I didn't realize, I didn't even, I heard that this could be where they come from or where you're part of this Dogman thing. It could be, related to government agencies and things, but
yeah. Well,
I didn't really know for sure until that,
the best that I've come up with from my own personal research experience or whatever in this so far is that these things come from our ancient past. Our government did not invent these things.
yeah,
However, they
hmm
found out about them, and our government has been using them, trapped them, caught them, and they're using them and their DNA and their breeding programs where they are raising and trying to create super soldiers for military purposes.
hmm
And that's the thing. The problem is, you were stopped. The agents identified themselves to you as Homeland Security. Homeland
right.
Security is not the military. So
No,
it's one thing if the military is doing this for military purposes, but this is Homeland Security. Well, what's their
yeah,
business in that? Homeland
well,
Security should be protecting the homeland, and that means protecting our lives, not
right,
monsters.
exactly. And I
We're,
wish I
we're
would have
monster
said it that
phobic.
way,
We're
but
monster phobes.
yeah, I guess I just saw that on there. I did see that. They said it and I did see it on their credentials. If what I don't know, but it could be, they could be whoever. And but I did see it and they said it, so I
That is
know that
true.
much.
It wasn't
That is
national
true
security,
too.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you know.
yeah. It was.
Agencies will pretend to be other agencies at times as well. So
Well, I wondered that too. I don't know for sure, other than um, that's I saw it and they told me, and that's all I have to go by. But
right.
it's definitely something um, related to some, you know, alphabet agency of some sort. So at
Right.
least we know that. I do know that for a fact. And yeah, like you said, they are probably, and not probably, they are, doing something with the Nephilim DNA, and they captured them and they're
Oh yeah.
tweaking them and they're,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
My theory is that Bigfoots are just Nephilim. I mean, think about it.
yeah,
They're
mm,
cannibalistic giants.
yeah, Yep. They're just on the
That's
smaller end of
nothing.
it.
And not only
Yeah.
that, like I've listened to several stories where they have done DNA testing on these, on like Bigfoot specifically. And they even did, there are labs in Louisiana. And I know with the state police, I used to know the heads of the crime lab here. But the Louisiana lab even did some of the testing on, and they determined this stuff was 50% human, 50% unknown animal on a Bigfoot. So
Oh, okay.
um I don't know, you know, how that plays out, but it seems these things do have human DNA. And I've heard I don't know of tests done on the Dogman, but I've heard similar stories. I know of one case of someone I know who got into an encounter with these creatures, and they were able to collect hair, scat, flesh, blood, all kinds of samples from this, like DNA samples of this creature. Well,
Yeah.
the feds showed up at his house and demanded, they knew he had all of that. He was going to bring him to a lab to get investigated. They showed up at his house and they threatened him to the ends of the earth for every single thing he had, and that he was not allowed to go and have it tested at any facility. So, and they stole it. They just took it from him. So, not
Oh,
only is our government complicit in creating these things and breeding programs, they're also releasing them into the wilds and wilderness areas. And I think all of that, my own personal theory, is that all that fits Agenda 21, where
mm-hmm.
they're trying to scare people out of rural areas and force everyone into major metropolitan cities to the new global reset of build back better. All right, where they want the
Yeah.
15-minute cities.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
again, all you
Right.
got to do is listen to what these people like Carl Schwab and the World Economic Forum, all you got to do is listen to what they're saying. They tell you what they're going to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. They always do. They always do. If you listen to what they say, you really listen, it happens or it will happen. You know, it does, and it always has.
Right.
Um, yeah, even that I don't Rockefeller, I think, even said 9/11 was going to happen before it happened. I think it was one of the Rockefellers.
That was, you're referring to David Rockefeller, and David
Okay,
Rockefeller, wait, not, I'm sorry, correction, not David, Nick Rockefeller.
Nick, yeah,
Nick was talking to Aaron Russo,
okay,
and Nick Rockefeller explained the entire thing, not in super detail, but he explained
yeah,
the whole thing about 9/11 6 months before it took place. And Aaron Russo went, before he died of cancer, went public with that story to explain what Nick
yeah,
Rockefeller told him. And he told him before 9/11 happened that it was going to happen. All right.
yeah,
Before that,
hmm,
not only that, even um, Alex Jones said before it took place that planes were going to be flying into the buildings by terrorists, kind of thing, or to be
yeah,
blamed on terrorists. That was something else he put out before it took place, before it happened. And I tell you
yeah,
what, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of that on this show because I'll just get
yeah,
censored and cut off if I do.
right,
But and that brings me to another point of announcement I'm gonna make real quick after. But I've studied 9/11 more than anyone else I know. And you could hand me a microphone and I could go in the auditorium right now. And just off the top of my head, I could discuss it for 2 weeks long and only really focusing on the physical evidence of the case, which is what I was trained to do as an investigator. And I did my own special investigation of 9/11, and I did it focused on physical evidence. And my computer was destroyed by the government for what the records I had amassed and for what I was trying to tell people.
oh,
And I've got people to back that up. That
mm,
that happened. There's a whole story behind it, but they destroyed. They gave a virus to my computer, which technically wasn't a virus, but acted just like a virus. I mean, all this kind of technical stuff. My uncle used to be a big word at Apple, and I told him about it. He's like, John, Apple computers do not get viruses, and I'm sure yours is not the first one. And he hangs up on me. But I have a person that worked with Apple that got a 36-page confidential report on what happened to my computer. And my buddy says, John, He says, what happened to your computer? It's only in theory. The technology is not supposed to even exist. That it's only in theory. That means, he says, that tells you exactly what it was. And if you read the Patriot Act, it's Article 126 gave the government the authority to do what they did to my computer. 126 Patriot Act. So, and by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, the Patriot Act and the newly signed second National Defense Authorization Act, not only does it give the government power to assassinate citizens at will for just about any reason they want, but it also removes every single one of your constitutional rights. So the Constitution, I hate to break it to you, it's a thing of the past. Because if the government has the authority that they can take away your Constitution at will for any reason, and you have no recourse and no protection, you don't have a constitution. So they've used laws to circumvent the Constitution, just like they're going to circumvent.
They don't even have to take it to Guantanamo,
Right? No, they're just going to turn this into Guantanamo.
Now they can just, do it right in your front yard.
Yeah. So it's insane, but I tell you, it caps me so much that they're knowingly creating these assets that are killing human beings and women and children. I mean, I know stories about children being ripped to pieces by these things.
Well, me too. And that's another reason.
Sorry, go ahead, babe.
That's okay. Well, that's another reason why I want to, tell people too, is that, I'm not trying, I'm not talking about it to convince anybody that's real. We're beyond that. And, your belief isn't really necessary. What's necessary is if you're open to hear about it and and you take it seriously, it could save your life,
Right.
or at least be somewhat aware and be ready in case, you're out and about, and especially out in nature, just to have the knowledge that I mean, if that happens to you, out in nature and you're not aware of it, there's nothing you can do. If at least if you're aware of it, you can do something to help yourself survive it.
Right.
So
I said to you, Joe, you are a very well trained, military person, even though it was years ago. You had all the specialized training, you practice all the time, etc. And you had the benefit of being in a steel box. If you're out in the woods and you're unarmed, you're never going to outrun these things.
No.
And so, you won the day, but I think it took all your skills, your ability to stay pretty calm. You're always calm under pressure, and this is otherworldly, right? So, paradigm changing pressure, and you still kept the truck on the road, took care of business, and you the public to make sure this. And so, just think about your average person just who doesn't have that for them.
Yeah.
Her phone's cutting out.
Warbling and it's kind of.
Oh, I thought I finally had it. Anyway, I'm just saying it's people are up against something bigger than they could have imagined. They could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Joe, earlier you
I wanted to ask
mentioned.
John something.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just wondered if you had ever heard. Jeff Nadolny put a story out recently from this man named Jesse, and he's held on to his story for like 30 years. And he and his wife were at a little fishing spot. It was like a favorite spot that, I think when they met, and now by this time they've got a 9-year-old little boy, and they take him down for the weekend to go fishing and camping. And the dad and the son are off one day hiking. The mom is back at the campsite preparing things. And when they return, he says his wife was just white as a ghost, insisting they leave. She saw this thing that looked like a wolf, but was just enormous on the other side of the river or creek or whatever, staring her down. And she's like, we have to leave. We have to leave. And he calmed her down, convinced her to stay. So they stayed that night. Next day, they're doing their fishing far from one another, but like not all coupled together. And a little boy up on this rock, out kind of in the water, and he looks over at his son. He sees his son is dropped his fish, and he's trying to tell him, like, grab away or whatever. He's his kids like.
It's your phone's
Yeah,
cutting out again.
yeah, you're pinging and warbling again.
It's getting bad.
Yeah,
So I've tried this 20 times. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's all right.
That's okay.
Anyway,
I'm
this
not
thing
familiar.
grabbed the little boy, and
Yeah.
they ran after it. He told the wife to go back and get the truck, because this is before cell phones. Go get help. They come back with law enforcement and rangers and whatnot. They find the little boy, ripped to shreds, fed upon, and now they try to turn it on the parents when clearly the parents did not do this. They had no blood on them or anything, no reason to
Right.
do anything like this. And they said, this was a bear, and you will say it's a bear, or we will press charges against you for murder. So the wife
No,
ends
so
up
they're gonna
killing
blame them for
herself in the
murder.
90s.
Right.
She drank herself to death in the 90s. And this man has been alone with this, and so he hated all these channels. He told Jeff he hated him with his, like, shall we, thing. And he's just said
I like
it was
Jeff.
just,
Yeah.
I do too, but he just resented it because he thought people just weren't taking it seriously, and what he had lived through, and lost his son, lost his wife. It just, that one moment destroyed his entire life.
Yeah, you're right.
And
That's the
it's
thing.
like,
These things are destroying lives, and our government puts their value over ours. There was a
that's
story.
exactly what I was going to say.
There was a story not long ago in Oklahoma where a dog man snatched up a kid from his backyard. The mom was like washing dishes, watching her son playing in the backyard. One minute he's there, one minute he's gone. And it took him up a wooded area, and it actually climbed up a cliff. It climbed up a cliff
Yes, I
with
heard
this
that.
kid, and it ate the kid on top of the cliff. Later, the state police found the body of this boy on top of this cliff and said that there were large, very large canine prints, and that's the only thing they had to go off of. And it looked like and they declared it an animal attack. One of the stories I covered on my old channel that you can still find online, called The Validity of Victor, because other shows replayed it, but it's called The Validity of Victor. And
Okay.
on that channel, we talk about a case where we proved one of Victor's stories from Jeff's channels that Victor claimed, where these people were having a picnic in their backyard in the middle of the day. Now imagine your friend's typical American backyard picnic. One of these dog men walk out of the wood line in the middle of the day in front of everyone at the picnic, grabs a person, and runs off in the woods. And everyone there is like,
Man.
So they
Yeah.
called the authorities. The authorities get involved, and they end up calling Victor's crew through the DNR. That's how you reach them. Yes, 9/11 was an inside job, Christine. You're right. It was. And I'll argue that against anyone on planet Earth till I'm dead.
Yeah.
It was
I'll be right there with you,
100%.
John. I'll be right there with you.
Look, I lived in Italy, and when I was going to school in Italy, studying theology, Berlusconi was reelected as president of Italy. He comes from their intelligence section, our version of our intelligence agencies. And when he got elected, on the first page of the newspaper, the day after his election in Italy in 2008, it ran that he said, he was quoted as saying, and it made front page of the Italian newspaper across the country, that 9/11 was an inside job, and all the world's intelligence agencies know that. They're aware of that.
Yeah.
That it was completely, it's only the public that's being lied to. And they do all that all the time. Now, they use that as an excuse so that we could go into a 20-year war in the Middle East that no Americans want to be in. Then when that dries up and they can't do that anymore. Now, look, watch this. The Republicans say, hey, elect us and we'll end the war. Doesn't happen. Democrats say, elect us, we'll end the war. Doesn't happen. The revolving door. You see?
Yeah.
Well,
Because
Republicans
it's a
then say, "Hey,
uniparty.
like us, yeah, it's one.
There
We
are
have a
no two
one.
parties.
We have a one-party system. It's
Yep.
illusion. We don't have a two-party
Yep.
system. That we have a one-party system. Now
Yeah.
that said, after the war drives up in the Middle East, well, we just start a war in the Ukraine. And when that
Yeah.
starts drying up after we've given them all our money instead of American people, hey, now all of a sudden we have a war going on back in Israel now, and we got to turn our direction to that, and in Yemen, which is another
Yeah.
conflict. So yeah, they just go into non-stop war so they can
Yeah.
funnel all their money out of the U.S. It's nothing more than why on earth would they pass laws saying that there's no oversight and no accountability for where all this money is going that we're
Right.
giving away? And then
Well,
you
it's
have
just like the 700 billion Obama gave back to the bankers in
right,
2008. Not
right,
a single rule attached to that. They said, "Oh, we don't even need it. We don't want it." And
right.
no, not a single stipulation attached to that. My dad lost his pension. He worked for BF Goodrich for like 54 years and he lost everything. Don't you think families would have liked their pension restored?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's just insane. We
So
are in full blown insanity, is what we're
So
in.
and yeah, so they're doing that. Now that was I'll swing back to that 1 second. I want to finish up one other point on this. So we give all this money to the Ukraine, and then now it's being reported Zelensky is buying $1 million homes in Florida.
Yep. Yep. And yachts.
Oh, yeah.
One federal agent released paperwork that he's been given U.S. citizenship and like showed his credentials with his new IDs and passports and stuff. Coincidence? No.
No.
Zelensky's bought not one but two multi-million-dollar luxury yachts. So where's
Yeah.
our money going? You know what I'm saying? I mean, to this little stooge, and now
I'll tell
swinging
you where
back
it's
to
not going. It's not going to fix roads because we're on them 24/7. And I'm
more
telling you,
borders.
they're like
Yeah,
washboards.
right,
It's
right,
like kidney shakers. And I'm
right.
thinking, you can't get the basics down.
Yeah.
You know, it really boggles the mind. It really does.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
too
yeah,
hot.
it does.
it's crazy, but I tell people this. This is why I started my Braven Bushcraft channel on gear review and prepping and stuff and survival. If you look at the writing on the wall, our country cannot sustain what we're going through. Cannot. It's
No.
impossible. You don't have to be an economist or an expert to understand or see that. Our company cannot sustain what we're experiencing right now. It
No.
can't
I'm a
economically.
dummy and I can see it. Like I'm not even smart and I can see it. So the smart people have no excuse whatsoever.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between common sense and smartness, and I hate the so-called smart people. I'll try and take common sense, any day of the week, or common people for that matter, because
I
those
hear
are the
you.
good
Yeah,
people. Those are the good people. They're the ones that aren't trying to take advantage of everybody else for their own selfish gain, and then blaming
Right.
you for in the process. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
They blame us for everything,
They
right?
blame us
To
for
us,
everything.
climate change. This is all here, buy all this junk you don't need. And
Right,
everyone needs a car and everyone needs
right.
their own house and blah, 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 blah,
So,
blah. But it's your
Joe,
fault. You're ruining the climate.
right, right. Oh yeah, yeah, right. Which that's all a scam too. According
Mhm.
to them, that we would already all be underwater and dead already. So that just shows they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
right.
Joe,
Ice
so
Age.
one of the the 70s, all they screamed out
Yeah,
was ice age.
yeah.
I
When I
remember.
was a kid, it was an ice age coming.
Yeah, that's in the 70s. I remember that too. It was all over the news, and you got
Yeah,
to prepare for this, blah blah blah. Now it's
yeah,
global warming,
yeah,
and they had to change. Global warming didn't work, so they had to change it to climate
yeah,
change. So that way, it's like a catch-all for anything, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hog hops. Oh, it's climate change. You need new taxes for that. As if taxes are going to solve anything.
No,
Right.
because they sure don't solve anything. They just
Exactly.
launder it
That's my
into
point.
these black
Dude,
projects,
well,
you
not yeah.
know,
I mean, I could
It,
go into. You know what? I'm gonna bring
trafficking and
I have an engineer buddy of mine. I'm gonna see if I can't get him to come on a show here sometime and talk about the reality of um, of carbon monoxide or dioxide in the air, and
Mhm.
how it's a good thing. How it's only 3% of the air of our atmosphere, and so and nothing we're doing is really affecting that. And if it is, it's
No.
not enough to make a dent in anything. So it's all BS. It's a scam. But look, we're drawing close to the end of the show, or it won't let me it's given me a limit on how long I can run it. So, but
Oh, really? Okay.
one of the commenters asked a question I wanted to ask Joe, and they said, being a trucker, of course, you've got other trucker friends and buddies, and you hear things that they talk about in that community. And they were wondering if you heard of any of the other truckers that might have talked about or come across situations with any kind of cryptids.
Yeah, a few. There are a few that I don't usually talk about it um to many people unless it comes up, and I might. But yeah, there was a couple of people. One guy I used to work with several years ago. This is totally not my encounter, really, kind of a little bit, but we got to talking, and he said, it's about Bigfoot and stuff. He says, I think I got one of those on my property up in the UP, way up there by Lake Superior, and they have him and his dad had this place for ever since he was young, I guess, younger. And they'd go up there to hunt and whatever, and they never had a problem up until the last recent few years. And at that time, and I said, and he said, "Sorry." I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm getting tapping on the windows, and I'm hearing something on the roof every now and then, and tapping on the walls, all over the place, and the signs he's seeing around there, certain type of scratches on trees, and it sounded like a dog man to me. It didn't sound like a Bigfoot." And he asked me, he knows I, have some hand cannons and some large rifles and whatever. And he said, "Why don't you go up there, on a weekend, and we'll hang out, hey, do this and that, and, have a barbecue, make it a fun weekend." And like, okay, and check it out. And I'm thinking, okay, I didn't tell him about Dogman because I knew he wouldn't believe it. So, but I did kind of have that inclination to believe that's what it was. Now, the first night, he was there. Pulled up in there on a on a Friday night, and it was, he was already there, and nothing happened that night. Second night, we started hearing. It was probably midnight, 1 o'clock, and started hearing what he was describing, and I had already checked out the prior day. There was trees that were like, about 4 feet up, around near, not far from his place, in the woods. You couldn't get any equipment back there. There's no tracks, no nothing. Just busted, like 4 feet up, just busted or just splintered.
Just snapped in
Um,
half. I
just
saw
snapped.
pictures of it.
Yeah. Footprints, huge canine footprints. Scratches, deep scratches in a few trees that I've noticed, and I'm like, this has got to be a dog, man. It just looks like it. I know Bigfoot does the tree thing too and snaps them, but all the other stuff, Bigfoot kind of does too, but they usually don't do the tapping thing. That kind of, is a dog, man. From what I've heard and researching it, and it's more of a dog man thing. So, he and then he decided, I guess he had a lot more nerve to go out there because I was there with my Benelli M4, right in my hand, and he ran out with a flashlight to see it and his phone to see if he could get a picture of it. And
Crazy.
well, and he thought he was going out there to capture a Bigfoot. Well,
I
he
said, why
he
would you chase a Bigfoot either? I mean, come on.
well, I don't know. He wasn't really chasing it. He just was trying to capture a glimpse and maybe get a picture. Well, anyway, he ran a dog man up a tree, is what he did. And I didn't see it. I stayed in the house. I said, "Well, wait," and he was gone. And just stayed right by the kitchen table with my, shotgun ready at the door, or, in case he chasing him or whatever back in, because I heard it growl. And then when he was running in, as he ran in, about just before he came in, I heard a big thud, which was a tree about 20 feet from the house. It jumped out of the tree, and it was gone. And he described what it looked like, and everything to me, and it freaked him totally out. And he never heard of that. And he said, "Well, And I told him I thought it was probably that. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "You wouldn't have believed me, this and that." And
How do you
you know,
describe it?
it was. He described it as like it was striped. It was like a tricolor, is black and gray, and I think some brownish or tannish in there too. It was like kind of striped and about 7 feet tall. You would think the way it looked like it was just a. So it was a werewolf up in the tree. And I'm like, well, it's a dog man, was what they call him.
Right.
Yeah. So that was another one, and he was a guy that I knew, another truck driver. But I've heard of other truck drivers seeing, like things run across the road that looked weird. Like a guy told me he saw it, and it looked like a hyena but it
Yep.
was like 4 times bigger.
Yep.
It run across, in the middle of nowhere and nobody's around.
I've heard of many
Um,
stories of a hyena headed type of dog man.
Oh,
mhm,
scary.
In the
yeah,
in the in the dog man community, they've got all these like variants and types. I don't know who came up with that Dren. I think it's trash, but there
They need to
are
multiply it by about 100. I mean, I think
there
there's
are
every variation of
yeah,
anything we
yeah,
can't even think of probably.
right. But there are a few that are commonly seen. The hyena one is not as common. It's more rare, but I have heard of several stories with
Yeah,
the hyena.
me too.
It just looks like a dog man, but it's a hyena head instead of a canine.
Yeah.
and there was another guy that did mention he saw something that looked like a fox, but was like
Mhm.
the size of a. I think he said like a donkey, but
They
like
the
about a fox.
Foxmen, I almost mentioned that a minute ago in the different types. They're smaller. They're not as big as the other, but I
Yeah.
will say that there's a lot of stories along the Appalachian Trail of the Foxman, but I will say
Hmm.
this. To my knowledge, there has never been a harmful encounter with the Foxman.
Oh, okay.
But,
Um.
now I could be wrong on that, or
Hmm.
I might not know enough. If anyone has any stories, let me know. But I've never heard the rumor is they tend to be more on the peaceful side of things. They're not as aggressive as these other
Okay.
types are.
Well,
And for people, there's also the goat man as well. And that's been
yeah.
the goat man is mentioned in the Bible 4 times. They call it a satyr, but
Oh,
My
it's
Joe's
mentioned
grandma
grandmother,
saw. Yeah,
my
his
grandma,
grandma saw one.
okay.
twice,
Okay,
twice.
Tell us that real quick.
Well, this would have been before I was even born. I w- and my grandmother died when I was a baby, but this was from her kids and my cousins that told me this about her. That was my dad's mom, and it was in the yard, and there was hoof prints in the yard too, like big, huge hoof prints and bipedal, and they had pictures of it and everything. But it was, before I was born, it was just relayed to me through my cousins. About that, and I didn't think nothing of it at the time. We weren't talking cryptids. I wasn't into cryptids. I didn't, and I'm like, yeah, go, man. I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe she was on medication and thought I mean, I was really skeptical at that time. I wasn't like thinking this is. I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything. So
And that
I
was
at the
like what,
time.
in the 30s, Joe?
No, that would have been probably in the 50s. It was a little
Oh,
before. It was probably in the 50s, a little before I was born, a little bit before that.
oh, okay.
So, yeah, but they did mention it. Several of my cousins did mention it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's a cool story, but okay, whatever. I wouldn't think much about it until my dogman experience, and that's when that popped up in my head again.
Yeah, I
You
told you
know.
I had a priest friend of mine that lived in the Upper UP,
Hmm.
and he and I were close buddies with each other for a long time. And I told him when I started my earlier channel, the Dogman channel from before my old channel, And I was telling him about all this stuff. He was like, John, he's like, I love you, but I think you're full of crap on all this stuff, you know? And he would, there's a lot of hunters in the UP. There's a very strong hunting and farming culture up there.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and so he went to a bunch of hunters. I've hunted up there, by the way, by myself in the woods.
Oh
And
yeah.
Oh my
I had.
goodness.
yeah.
Yeah.
And and I never had a problem when I was there. But he went around and asked a lot of the local hunters when he was a priest up there. I went to his ordination, which was in Marquette. All right.
Yeah.
In Marquette,
Yep.
which is a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, beautiful little town. But I went to his ordination there, and he asked a bunch of local hunters if they had ever seen any cryptids or dogmen, and they all said no. And so he thought I was wrong. But one day he said he ran into a state trooper at some event, and he started up a conversation with him. And he told the state trooper, he's like, hey, yeah, a buddy of mine does this show, and he talks about this, and he says they're real and they're up here. And he said the state trooper told him, yes, they are real. He called me on the phone to say, John, the state trooper told me you were right. You were right. So
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
it's
Well, and
nice.
Yeah.
it's
Well, they were
I
like.
like hearing it from, people in positions like that, because, it's not like you just have blind trust and loyalty, but they do come with, a certain amount of credibility. Let's just be honest. You hope they do anyway.
Right.
And
And
so
I'm.
these stories from rangers and cops and firemen and military and whatever, it's like it perks my ears up.
I always take stories a little bit more serious from law enforcement and military.
Hmm.
And I've talking probably more to them than I have to civilians. And
Yeah.
everything they tell me, it all backs up with each other, even though they don't know each other. They're given the
Yeah.
same information. So it's real and it's scary. You know,
Yeah.
I said earlier that about Plato saying you can't know something unless you don't already know it. And that means,
Mhm.
how the human
Yeah.
brain works, but I don't
Mm.
have to see something to know if it's real. I believe God
Yeah.
exists. I believe that demons
Right.
exist, but I've never met one.
Right.
So just because I haven't seen it, I haven't communicated with it, doesn't mean it's not real. I fully believe they're real, but I've never met one,
Same here.
you know?
Same
Um,
here. Yeah.
so that's the thing. But anyway, we're coming to the end of my time allowance here. And
Mhm.
also, I want to make an announcement before I forget. There's a new network that I've joined up with some guys called the Paladin Network. And they're trying to launch a new platform, kind of like their own YouTube, if you will. And it's just starting out. I think they try to get it up today, but I don't know if it's fully up yet. I think it's still in kind of a testing phase. But it's a group of veterans that have come together and are trying to bring all their content, their own shows together. It's a place where you will not be censored. So I'm going to end up doing I'm still going to do all my shows here, but I'm also going to have my shows uploaded there as well. And also, I'm going to do some shows on there eventually, not right now, but eventually, that I can't do here, because I can go a
Yeah.
whole lot deeper into talking about things that I can't talk about here, that I can expound on there in more detail and
Yeah.
warn people about or give people more knowledge about in different areas.
Well,
So I
I
just
look
want to
forward
throw
to
that out
that.
there.
I mean, that in and of itself is
Yep.
tragic,
Right.
that
Yeah.
we're so
We're
censored
so censored, which is
here, but
un-American, but
it is.
that's the
Yeah.
situation we
People
live
just
in.
accept it. They
Right.
just accept it
Right.
because they're like, well, we love we love the videos, we love our
Right.
communities, and
Yeah.
it's like this
It's
is
a
how they
trap
chip away
though.
at us, right?
It's a
Yeah,
trap. You know who
Yeah.
it
created
is.
Facebook? It wasn't Mark Zuckerberg. It was intelligence agencies. Hello.
Yeah,
That's the
Mm.
truth.
yeah.
All right.
Mm.
Now,
No,
they
I
do
believe
that
it.
they do that a lot because what they do is they get these systems in here and to control them, especially monetarily, and then they control you, and then they control the
Yeah,
narrative. And again, I
yeah,
always say to control, if you want to have control, knowledge is power. And in order to
yeah,
control power, you must control knowledge. So that's
yeah.
what they
Yeah.
do. That's why you're
Well, look at
crazy.
how many. I told you how many of my comments have been deleted from
Right.
your
Yeah.
from your comment sections
Right.
and many others too.
Right.
I mean, it happens to me all the time. Now I just laugh. I used to get really mad about it, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, whatever. You guys are lame. You know?
Yeah.
So I'll eventually come back here when I get a good link for the new Paladin network, and I'll put it on here. It's also, they're also going to do like charity work for veterans. So things like,
That's awesome.
yeah, things like helping with their disability, or, you know, getting a prosthetic limb, or making
Yeah.
a house payment, or even maybe getting a house. Maybe getting a service animal or something. So we're
Things
gonna,
they should not need help with.
exact
You
things
know,
that
they should.
are things our government should be spending money on, but are
Right.
not. They don't
Right.
give a flying
Right.
crap. One thing I learned in the military: the government doesn't give a flying crap about you or their own soldiers. In fact, they really want
No.
them
Yeah.
to go away after their service. Period.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Joe told me when he left, they kept trying to rein him back in, and he was sat down and said, "Listen, you know, we put about $5 million into you. You know, we really, you know, we'd like you to stay." And he was like, nope. And then when he left, then he was approached about contract work. And so there's a lot of these things he didn't really think a whole lot of, I guess. And I said, well, who approached you? He said, I don't know, somebody from the National Guard or whatever. I thought they were trying to rein him into in a different way, because they
Right.
did give him a lot of specialized training that, and that's where
Right.
he saw that dead Bigfoot was up in Alaska, not on the contract, and I'm sorry, but in one of these special like Arctic training things or whatever,
Right.
where
Right.
the Rangers, I told you about that on the phone, where the Rangers had shot it with the 50 cal.
Right.
And so, but then I know we're running out of time, but something I want to put a bug in your ear about, John, is the way it's like Joe doesn't forget. Like once it comes up, he will remember all the details. But he never told me some of these things until recently. We've had countless conversations. I'm like, did they Men in Black him, like the zing zing thing and zap? So like this is all getting put way back in his subconscious
It happens.
memory.
By the way, for people that don't know, that Men in Black technology where they can like erase your memory, that's real.
Mhm.
Not
Well,
like that little
I
pin device in the movie, but they do have that technology.
I
Well, I don't
sincerely
think.
wonder if this has happened to Joe. I sincerely wonder.
Well, they didn't totally. I don't think. If they did.
No, but I think it puts it in a box and puts it way back in the furthest back file,
Right.
some
But
of these
Yeah.
things.
I do have to end the show. We can
Okay.
talk more later, and we can always come on and do another show too, some down the
Yeah, let's
road
do it
too. So
again sometime. This
yeah,
is
it'll be
fun.
fun. Look, Joe, Jenny, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and it's fantastic. And I'm so glad y'all came on and we could cover this topic. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and Joe,
Thank you for having us.
I'm glad the story ended happy. And dude, anytime you can kill a monster, save your life, and piss off the evil government at the same time, that's a win-win. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Well,
kudos to you.
by sharing this, if this saves one person's life by hearing what I have to say, then that's all worth it to me.
And that's what
So.
it's all about. That's why I do the show. I do the show to warn people what's actually out there, because they're killing people.
Mhm.
And if people
And
Yeah.
you do a
haven't,
great job of it,
I,
John. You do a great job of educating
I
people
care
just
more
on
about people.
many things,
I care about more people than anything else. That, and that Jesus is the solution to everything. So
That's right.
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
take. I'm a I'm a Christian, and I'm a patriot, and that's how I'm gonna
Mhm.
die. So
That's
Yeah.
uh,
right.
I'm against the socialist, communists, all the far right and satanic insanity that's going on in our country.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And it is not any satanic panic. It's real. It's the real
it,
deal.
oh yeah, that's all. Well, that's all it is. All that stuff's mental. They're trying to normalize mental illness now, and I like all these the pronouns and all that. Man, as far as I'm concerned, it's he, she, and mentally ill. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and God. So that's it. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank y'all for coming on. Thanks the audience. Thank you everybody in the audience. I will be posting later when I can a link to the new Paladin network. Be patient with it. It's still it's just infancy stage, and there's going to be a lot of kinks to iron out, but hopefully it'll be a place y'all can go, and that can spread too. I'm real happy with the number of people that have been coming on the show. For me just starting another channel, it's been taken off, and and doing really
You're,
well. So I want to thank
you're really
everybody.
good at it.
Well,
Just
Yeah.
keep fighting the
Yeah.
good fight, because you're really,
but,
you know, that you've
yeah.
you're really great at this. So
Well, thank you.
thank you for having us.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for coming.
Yeah,
So,
it's
and
my pleasure too, John. You know, I've been wanting to talk
absolutely.
to you for years, actually,
Oh, well,
and
that's great.
recently, you know, was able to connect, and
Right,
it's
right. I wish we would have connected that conference, but that's great.
yeah,
So, look, anyone who wants to reach out to me or if you have any stories or any guests that you might be able to help get online that you think might help the show or help the people anywhere on these topics, please contact me at the Harbinger Report, or actually, it's just Harbinger Report at yahoo.com. So, we'll see you there. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks again, Joe and Jenny. And for everybody, keep the lights on.